Once upon a time, we didn't know that the earth was round, but we still knew male and female. It was the most basic fact that we've always known. That's how terrifying it is that we're now in a time where people are actually saying we don't know that. There are people every day in this country going to their jobs, knowing that the men in their office are going to be using their bathroom. They're very uncomfortable. Again, I get messages every day about it. Or if they say the wrong thing, they can be punished by their HR departments. They could lose their job. I know why the ABC won't cover this issue. It's because they don't want their audience to know the reality of it. Feels like they're trying to make an example out of you, saying to everybody else, don't you stick your head up.
Oh, I'm sure they.
Yeah.
The process is the punishment.
I've spent 3 years now watching the Sex Discrimination Commission and being like, I just don't know how this works. If you don't know what sex is, well then why are you here? This is a really serious court case that impacts everybody, because if we don't have these rights to truth and reality, we have nothing.
Sall Grover is the founder and CEO of Giggle, which is a female social network. For 3 years now, she's been fighting a legal battle against accusations that she has wrongfully discriminated against what are called trans women by excluding them from her women's only app. Just days ago, author J.K. Rowling sent her best wishes and support to Sall in regards to this fight. Sall, thanks so very much for joining us on something that's really actually very important.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan.
This surely must be one of the most important cultural decisions that this country has made for a long time. It's going to have enormous ramifications. We hear nothing of it from our publicly funded ABC. Nine has more or less left it alone. The Guardian seems to have covered it reasonably fairly. The Australian has recognised how important this is. Tell us about the law case that you're involved in at the moment, Sall.
Okay, so I have just been in the full federal court, so the appeals court in the federal court for the past week, in a case called Giggle v. Tickle. It stems from a court case from last year that I lost. It's a man who claims to be a woman, what some people would potentially call a transgender woman, made an Australian human rights complaint against me, citing gender identity discrimination because I had removed him from a woman-only social networking app that I created. So because I refused to settle in the AHRC complaint stage, which to do so I would have had to, the conditions were, let him on the app, let all men who claim to be women on the woman-only app go to sex and gender education classes, pay $20,000, apologise, and moderate all the content on the app so that men who claim to be women weren't offended by anything women were saying. I couldn't agree to those terms, so I said no. So it was he filed in federal court. We went through that. It was a circus. I lost that round. The judge ruled that sex is changeable, and that and non-binary, and that men who claim to be women require all of the legal rights and protections reserved for women. So I appealed the decision. It was heard this week. Now we wait for this decision. Now,
can I ask you? This is from a layman's perspective. Okay. They mightn't articulate it this way, but I reckon a lot of people in Australia would say, if they stop to think about it, what's going on here? I've often felt deeply offended and discriminated against when I've not been asked to a party. It's called discrimination. When you have a party, you invite some people, not others. Mm-hmm. That's actually discrimination. Mm-hmm. We paint it as a great evil. There are times when we feel discriminated against. Mm-hmm. But in reality, we all practice it, and it is part of the right of freedom of association.
Yes, and that's exactly why this case is so important, because it actually does touch on freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and freedom of association, which is the bedrock of a liberal, free society. So discrimination, yeah, you're right, it's painted often as something that's really, really bad, but we do discriminate constantly. And if you actually want to create spaces or services to cater to a specific group, you're by definition going to have to discriminate against other people. Like if you want to do something, say, just for children, well, adults aren't included. I mean, that's probably just the most basic example that you could give. So women-only spaces were something that was not a controversial concept for quite a long time. It was a right we'd already fought for, because there's a huge, there's an array of women-only spaces. So obviously you've got bathrooms and change rooms. So these are the just normal, everyday ones. Obviously these have been completely non-controversial until suddenly some men started claiming to be women and wanted access to them. Suddenly toilets and change rooms became a newsworthy topic for the first time ever. But then you have things like women-only gyms, social networking apps, but you also have rape crisis centers, domestic violence shelters. Now these were always the ones exclusively for women, because the women who require those kind of spaces are the women in society who have been impacted the most in the most negative way because they're women. They've been abused purely because of their sex. And to recover, they seek refuge in single-sex spaces where they can rebuild and connect. And just even seeing a male person can actually become quite traumatic. This is something that not every woman would understand this, but a lot of women do. So the Sex Discrimination Act in Australia was a piece of legislation enacted in 1984 that enshrined in law women's rights to have women-only spaces for the various reasons we need them, whether it is for the everyday need, you could even add breastfeeding spaces into that as well, or for what one might say more frivolous, but I would argue equally as important, say like gyms, and now we're going to the digital age, so that's where it's moving to. So to have a woman-only space, by definition, you're discriminating against men. And most men are good men, otherwise society would be chaos. Good men, it doesn't even occur to them to go into a woman-only space. In fact, I would argue the moment you're dealing with a man trying to force his way into one, you're not dealing with a good man. You're actually dealing with the reason why women-only spaces are so important. So for me, it was a no-brainer to defend them because, one, we already had them, so we have to get back what we had because we've lost a right here. But two, they are integral to a safe and equitable society for women.
Will the ruling here touch on the issues you've just talked about? I think parents everywhere who have daughters are horrified by the idea that a male could insist on the right to go into a female changing room for a sports team. And I read the other day about somebody being offered counselling so that they could cope with a naked man in their change room because they had the problem, not being able to manage it. Does this case surely have impacts on our attitudes?
Yes, because so I get messages as well from mums and dads, all over the country and all over the world, who are dealing with this issue and have no idea what to do, because if they speak up, are they going to get punished? Is their daughter going to get punished because she spoke up? And there are certain examples where young girls have been punished for speaking out or defending their ground. And so because we don't have a government at the moment who is willing to do anything about this issue, and the executive branch, aka places like the Sex Discrimination Act, are all in on the ideology, completely against us. And their interpretation of the Sex Discrimination Act completely takes away women's rights to have boundaries. It's going to, in this current zeitgeist in Australia, be left up to the judiciary. And you could definitely make the argument that that's the checks and balances, and they come in and they sort it out, and then you go, oh, the system worked as it should. But in the meantime, the years it takes to go through the court system, little girls are in change rooms with boys. Women on sporting fields are having bones broken. We know this is happening because there's a male on the opposite team. They're not allowed to oppose him. They'll get punished if they do. They simultaneously want to continue playing their sport. Why should they have to give it up? So we have to have, my case is the first. It will be the first of many court cases. Wrong place, wrong time. But if Parliament is not going to do anything, and I suspect they're not interested in doing anything because they caused the problem. The Julia Gillard amendments of 2013 was where it all went wrong. So we know how politics works in the sense that Labor's not going to admit they got it wrong. It would be for the Liberals to take up, but they sit there saying it's not a big issue. It's a culture war, or we're not going to import Trumpian politics. And you're like, but you've already imported a political position from America. It was gender ideology. Now you're just saying we won't import the solution, because America has fixed this problem in a big way. Trump has fixed it, whether you like him or not. He did realize that this was a votes winner amongst regular people, and he seized on that as a political opportunity. So the US has fixed it politically, the UK has fixed it in the courts. And Australia, hopefully we fix it in the courts. If not the federal, we go to the High Court. If we can't, just say some absolute horror story nightmare happens and we can't fix it there, then our only option left for there to be any kind of women's protections in law in Australia would have to be to hope that a majority government would eventually listen to us.
Let's focus on that for a moment. The Sex Discrimination Act of 1984, designed to protect women. The amendments in 2013, very poorly drafted, from my understanding of it all. I'd left the Parliament, should say that.
Yeah, you got out just in time.
And allowed to slip through, probably with very strong support from everybody who thought we're striking a blow for freedom. What was it about that amendment that has opened up this mess, so that far from achieving its original objectives of protecting women, it's exposing them, I'll say this, to serious risk?
Yes. Well, there's an argument to be made that nothing, because gender identity in the Sex Discrimination Act has a definition. They took out the definition of man and woman.
They took it out?
Yes. But it's still all through the Act, and when you're reading it, it's like there's only one thing you're talking about here. There's only one definition. But the definition of gender identity, it says within the definition it says like your gender identity is either in line with your assigned sex at birth or not. So it's acknowledging sex even in that definition. And so you could have gender identity in the Sex Discrimination Act as a protected attribute. So say, for example, if you are somebody who has some kind of eclectic expression, or you are a male person who wants to wear a dress, that you have protections on that basis of your gender identity. But when it's sex in play, so say for single-sex spaces or single-sex sport or any sort of single-sex services, your gender identity doesn't override that, because of course sex has to be sex in the Sex Discrimination Act, and if sex has no weight in the Sex Discrimination Act, well, what's the point of it?
Yeah.
So you've got...
It's a perfect circle.
Yeah. So
why have it?
Yeah. So the problem, I think, at the moment is not so much the amendments, it's the Sex Discrimination Commissioner herself. She's very vocal since she started her tenure that she wants to bring intersectionality and DEI to her role. And it's like, yeah, but you're not the custodian of the Intersectionality and DEI Act. You're the custodian of the Sex Discrimination Act. And if you don't know what sex is, and you're not willing to protect the reality of sex and all that comes from that, then why are you here? Because you're not doing your job properly. Because you can go and work day and night to have protections for people who call themselves trans. I'm not going to stop you. But my question is, and my problem with it is why do we have to give up our protections so that they have them? Last week, in the last round of submissions that the Sex Discrimination Act did in the Giggle v. Tickle case, they are arguing that trans women should have pregnancy protections. Now, this is the Sex Discrimination Commission stating in black and white in federal court that male people need pregnancy protections because they're women. And you're going...
I hate to ask, but what could that possibly be?
Nothing, John, nothing. It's nothing, it's made up, it's nonsense. But they are trying to give protections to a group of people that they don't need, to take away protections from a group of people that we do need. And for some bizarre reason, they have thought that we would just sit back and accept that. No, I have a 3-year-old daughter. She is going to need female-only spaces in her life. She also has to have the right to have boundaries from any man, no matter what his identity is. I'm not someone who sits there and demonizes all men or anything like that. I was raised by one. I'm related to many. I love.
You're talking to one.
Yes,
as far
exactly.
as I can tell.
Yeah.
We're having a perfectly civil conversation.
I don't know your gender identity. But
should I comment?
No. But for the protection and safety of women, we do need there to be times where men cannot be around. Now, I simultaneously am for male-only spaces, not just for sort of privacy and dignity, such as bathrooms and change rooms. There are male-only clubs. I know that there are some places that really want to be like male-only barber shops, because to create that camaraderie just of men, that they can be relaxed in that environment. I think that is fantastic. I actually think that male-only spaces for recreation and connection could actually be a really important thing in society at the moment. But we can't even have that conversation because the Sex Discrimination Commissioner is over here doing cartwheels about the fact that men can be women and women can be men, or you could be neither. And you like, but okay, but why do we all have to accept that?
There's two issues I'd like to drill into here. The first one is, I think one of the great problems with the political debate in Australia is, if you, broadly speaking, my side of politics has not entered the culture wars. It's not engaged. And that's let everybody down, because a parliamentary democracy only works when the ideas are fought out.
Yes.
They shouldn't be personalised. People hate that. That's for good reason. They shouldn't be personalised. But the issue should be fought out. And the great mistake that my side of politics has made is to think that you can run a free, open and prosperous society without a properly functioning, stable society. Yeah. So they've said, no, we don't need to be involved in the culture war. That doesn't create a job. Actually, I don't think you can have a functioning, prosperous economy on the back of an increasingly broken and uncertain and divided and weakened culture.
And scared. People are scared. I mean, there are people every day in this country going to their jobs knowing that either the women are knowing that the men in their office are going to be using their bathroom, they're very uncomfortable. Again, I get messages every day about it. Or if they say the wrong thing, they can be punished by their HR departments. They could lose their job. If you're there raising a family and you've got a mortgage to pay, you've got to put food on the table, you're like, I cannot say anything here, but I'm increasingly just sort of, I don't know, losing your soul. You're just going, I'm not living in a free society. Like, we know this from history, we know this from looking at any other sort of bad country in the world right now. If you don't have freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and freedom of association, you have nothing. And it's terrifying the direction that Australia is headed due to political cowardness. So in my case, so I've got the women's rights element of it. And if that wasn't bad enough, the other part of it, and the other part of the appeal, was during cross-examination in the first round, the Tickle's barrister showed me some evidence, and it was a candle that was political satire. I didn't make the candle. A supporter of mine had made it and was using it. I don't know if they were even using it to crowdfund, to be honest, because I crowdfunded the whole case. But it was connected to it in some capacity that I'm not, still to this day, actually not aware of. And when I was faced with it in court, I laughed. And in the decision from the first round, Justice Bromwich awarded aggravated damages to Tickle of $10,000 because I had laughed at the candle. In this latest round, in the appeal, so they want the damages increased to at least $40,000, but I think they landed on 100. Like, they want a lot of money for this laughing. Now, think of this. Oh, and also because I've called him in interviews. They say because I've spoken honestly, in my opinion, about this case, that I should be financially punished for that. Now you think of how that plays out then. So why would anybody go and be a witness in court if you could be punished for what you say? Why would anyone go and give an interview in the media? There you go, it's done. Free speech is done. We have none of it. Justice can't even be found because you can't rely on a witness having an honest reaction. Because I can't fathom that this candle is the most offensive thing that has ever been shown in federal court evidence. Anyone can think of it what they want, but I just cannot fathom in the history of Australian legal profession. It's the worst.
Our humour's dead.
Yes.
The wokerati hate humour. They're turning us into a humourless society.
Yeah.
We're all afraid to say anything for fear that it will somehow be used against us.
And that even kind of comes into like the heart of this issue. It's there's that great Margaret Atwood quote of men are afraid that women will laugh at them and women are afraid that men will kill them. And we have these men wearing dresses who we might have a reaction to that they don't like based on our opinion of them. And they are trying to punish us. Meanwhile, we are just wanting female-only spaces because of the very real threat to our safety that we navigate in society with.
So I'm deeply troubled that our publicly funded broadcaster, to lead to the second question that arises out of some of the things that you've said, with a responsibility to keep us informed about what's happening in our culture in a values-neutral way, non-judgmental way. That's their charter. That's what they're meant to do. I've often said that I shouldn't know the position of ABC staff on any issue. I suspect I know their issue. They stand on almost everything. Yep. But they are almost guaranteed every night to have a story about men behaving badly. Mm-hmm. Men behaving in ways which puts women at risk. Mm-hmm. Why are they not recognising the importance of ensuring that women can have genuinely safe places? Because, by definition, they're acknowledging that some men behave very badly. That will include deliberately. It might be as innocent as a teenage boy saying, "Oh, let's go and have some fun. We'll go into the girls." You and I wouldn't think that was funny.
No, but a teenage boy would.
Boy might. Yeah. Right through to a hardened criminal who says, "Well, now this is a way to gain access to women in a way that is beyond leering." Yeah. Beyond disgusting, but is actually downright dangerous. What is the matter with the public debate in this country? Starting, I'm sorry, anybody from the ABC who's listening, why is it that you think you can get away all the time with pointing to bad behaviour by men? Yeah. I mean, young men in this country, really many of them tell me they're seized by the idea that everything that's wrong in society is them. Mm. And the ABC never stops lecturing us on how badly men can behave, but they behave completely naively when it comes to preserving genuine safe spaces.
It is a genuine problem that there is this media narrative that it's just making all these young boys just terrified to be men, thinking that if they have any sort of masculine traits or anything, that immediately makes them a bad person. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, we need healthy masculinity in society to make it function. It's the yin to the yang it's men and women, we coexist. But I know why the ABC won't cover this issue. It's because they don't want their audience to know the reality of it. So they have this narrative going that this is the most oppressed, marginalized group in society. This is, say, the trans community. And, that they're born in the wrong body, that they really are women. And it's very much, always completely reinforced, basically, very subtly in that arena that you can't challenge it or anything. Don't challenge it. If you do, you're the bad one. There's no story in the ABC about the hearing this week, not one. They did cover it a little bit last year in the first trial. But one of the headlines they ran with was female app CEO did 2-year harassment campaign against a trans woman, something very close to that. And I remember seeing it, I was like, I don't know this man. I've never harassed him in my life. I would have no reason to talk about him if he hadn't taken me to court. And I made a complaint to them and they wrote back and they said, but the court did hear that from his side. And it's like, yes, of course that claim was made, but you've created this clickbait headline to make it seem like I'm harassing someone when in actual fact, from my perspective, it's me who's being harassed. I can't run a woman-only space. I'm being dragged through the courts. I have had to raise, through crowdfunding, over $1 million to fight this. Over $1 million. I think we're about 1.2, 1.3 in so far. Tickle has had pro bono legal fees paid. He's had...
By the taxpayer.
Yeah, grants from the Grata Fund. And then he's had the Sex Discrimination Commission on his side, so that's fully taxpayer funded. I mean, they were there for 3 days in court this week, once again with multiple barristers and solicitors. I mean, this is a lot of money being spent. There isn't a government grant that would even be available to me because I'm going against their zeitgeist. So, and then when they will, like places like the ABC would try and turn around and say, well, no one's interested in this. It's like, well, they are, because my entire legal fees have been fundraised by ordinary people who care enough about this issue to put money into it. So I know I am living proof that people care about it, because I'm not only talking to them every day, I'm actually seeing a numerical value of how much that ordinary people in this crazy cost of living society that we're in at the moment will actually go and put their money into this to try and fix it, when none of us should have to. This just should be politicians doing the job to fix it. That's their job that they already get paid for. But,
ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Sorry.
No, well, I'm an ex.
Yeah, I know.
But it really worries me.
Yeah.
It genuinely, deeply concerns me. We should be getting, a buy-in, because I see it as so terribly, terribly important.
Well, sorry, go on.
Just what in your mind, if you were to summation, we've been talking about it, but to go to the heart of it, what is really driving this? What's driving your opponent, in your view?
Well, I mean, I can't be part of his mind. I don't know his motivation for anything. I mean, the app that is in dispute here, Giggle, hasn't been online for 3 years. I had to take it offline to protect it from this. We're going to relaunch it. At this point in time, I'm probably not going to relaunch it in Australia. They've driven out a woman-owned startup for women from this country, and I'll have to block it. I'll geo-block it so that Australian women won't be able to use it. But for me to run a woman-only space online, I'm going to have to do it elsewhere. So
that is really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because you touched on it earlier. This would be a non-debate now in America and a non-debate in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court of the United Kingdom has cleaned this up.
Yeah.
They have said what we're constantly told to follow the science. In this instance, the Supreme Court of England is, which is hardly a bunch of dodos or dopes or half-educated people, and said, well, the science is clear.
Yes. I mean,
there are men and there are women.
Yeah, I always say,
I don't want to be cruel to people who are grappling with this issue, but I know, and I'm sure you know, transgender people who are aghast at where this debate is going.
I've got messages from some people who have a trans identity this past week saying that they want me to win. They know what sex they are. Everybody knows what sex they are, even the people who are desperate to reject it. I mean, I would say they almost know it more than anyone else, because it's haunting them so much. It's a huge problem for them.
And we should be sympathetic to that. I want to say that, because I don't want to sound harsh.
I would say that being sympathetic to that doesn't include indulging it. I don't know if that's the healthiest way as a society to do it, because you are effectively indulging a delusion. Now, if we were in a zeitgeist right now where it was that men could, wear or do things that were associated with more stereotypically for women, that would be great. That would be very healthy. There are men who like some more feminine things, and there's women who like masculine things. If we were just sort of going like, but anyone can just like what they like and wear what they like, that would be great. But we're not in that zeitgeist. We're in a zeitgeist where they're saying, under law, men are women if they claim to be. They don't have to do anything, which in a sense I agree with, because there's no surgery or hormones that turns a man into a woman anyway, so I don't think that was ever a good provision. But the whole thing is self-ID. But a man, whatever to the extent he has tried to put in effort to emulate a woman, is never going to be one. And so while we're always having to say, we've got to be sympathetic, very rarely is the conversation, let's be sympathetic to actual women who are losing everything on this. And I understand that there are some women who don't care about this issue. There's some women who don't care about female-only spaces, have probably used female change rooms and bathrooms every day of their lives, and so been quite happy about our rights being there, but they weren't even conscious of. But they might not want a woman-only gym. They might hopefully, wouldn't it be great if we lived in a world where there was no woman on this planet that needed a rape crisis centre? It's not the world we live in. And so the women who don't want women-only spaces or want to support the men who claim to be women, that's fine, that's their right to do that. But they can't consent and change the perception of every other woman. It's still the women who need female-only spaces should not have to give them up just because some people are quite happy to hand them over to another group of people. Those people still require it, and they've been completely forgotten by everybody. And so I just think that, look, what is the point of having any law on the basis of sex or gender identity if it's effectively meaningless because everyone's just having some strong inner sense of who they are and it can change daily? And well, how are we going to function? What are we doing?
So I think in the end, I'm a farmer. The sun gets up in the morning, goes down at night. It rains, it doesn't rain. Cattle give birth to calves. These things are realities. You can't stop them.
No, you don't milk a bull.
A scientist said to me a while ago, in 1,000 years' time, when our bones are dug up, and all our clothing and our jewellery and the way whatever we did is dissipated away, the science will show that there are men and there are women. There's nothing else. That's the reality. And what you're saying, and I agree with it, is that it's a falsity, but it's also a cruel hoax to try and deny reality. We don't control it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm currently being punished for acknowledging what I saw with my own eyes, what I can see every day with my own eyes, and for having instincts and boundaries. And then when it got to the point in court where I'm even getting punished for laughing, I was like, how many instincts am I going to get punished for? And it feels like they're trying to make an example out of you, so that to saying to everybody else, don't you stick your head up, don't you go in.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
The process is the punishment.
It definitely is, but at the same time, because of the big changes that have happened in the UK and the US, the zeitgeist has changed. More and
it's
more
moving.
People, yeah, 100%.
We're behind the 8 ball.
We are, and you just go, it was really frustrating during the last election cycle when the Liberal Party just wouldn't pick up on this issue, knowing that it is impacting everyday Australians, and just dismissing it as a culture war. And so we just sit there going, so you won't even listen to something because while it's like, okay, yes, everyone votes on money at the end of the day and what's best for everyone financially, that's fine, but we are all capable of caring about more than one thing. And when you're just seeing politicians just dismiss women and reality because it might be politically inconvenient for them, you say, well, so we're not being governed by anyone who's brave or who is willing to tell the truth. Because if you are going to stand there and say that men can be women, say in the Senate floor or wherever, why should we believe you about anything else? You are telling the most obvious lie. So I'm just going to assume that you're lying about everything else from that moment on. Because you've already done the ultimate test to see what you can get away with.
I repeat my earlier remark as well, agreeing with everything you say, that our leaders need to understand that a fractured, broken, distrusting society is not one that will be free and prosperous and support good policy. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
We need leadership as never before, to be frank, and that's why I do these podcasts, just hoping to put quality material, particularly before young people who are thinking, how do we make sense of this crazy, crazy world? Because in the last 15 years, the zeitgeist has gone to the most extraordinary place. Now, let's come to something you said a moment ago, because it was very grabbing. I think you used the word, you'll have to put a geo-block on your app for Australians. So we'll be in this absurd situation where you, I think I can say this quite safely, as an eminently reasonable person, fighting for something that the vast majority of Australians would regard as common sense. They'd be saying, what are we even having this fight about? But Australian women won't be able to join you, but women from America, from Britain, from Germany, from France, from Japan, from China, from India, from Indonesia.
You could have it in Saudi Arabia, but not Australia. So a country that is notoriously bad on women's rights actually would have this right, but Australian women don't have it. Because
Well, perhaps some of our activists could go over there and encourage them to rethink.
Oh,
I mean, a few cases in some of those countries.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain countries where you really wouldn't want to risk being identified as a woman. I mean, I can't fathom that there's a huge men identifying as women population in Afghanistan right now, where they have no rights. They can't even speak next to an open window. They can't choose what they wear. They can't have jobs. They can't have an education. I mean, do you feel like you're born in the wrong body then? And simultaneously, why don't women in Afghanistan just identify as men? If this is real, if this is something that's genuinely real, why can't they just go, I'm a man? It's because sex is real, for better or worse. Sometimes it's a really great thing, and sometimes it can be not great of how it's sort of interpreted by society. But in countries like Australia, we have been always pretty good with it, but we're currently, right now, we are not defined in law. We cannot say no to a man coming in our space if he has an identity of woman. So he has more rights than me.
Just grab that extraordinary set of words you just said. We are not defined at law.
No, we're not. We're not. That's
Can I just
what we're fighting
say that
for.
again to anybody who's watching or listening? Women are no longer defined at law. Mm-hmm. Well, at the very least, it confirms something you said. Bye-bye Sex Commissioner and the Act, and it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
That's effectively the net result of that.
Yeah, I mean...
If there are no men and there are no women, we're all just on a continuum.
Yeah, it's almost she's sort of talked herself in circles out of a job, which I think would be a positive thing to have happen.
Might save the taxpayer a few dollars.
Well, yeah, lots and lots of money, the millions of dollars a year that go into these commissions, where if they were functioning as they should in just a very dry way of making sure that the law was working as it should, that would be great. But we're currently here dealing with a sex discrimination commissioner who is interpreting the law incorrectly to fit an ideology. And within the law, there's lots of different issues. So how the Sex Discrimination Act was effectively how women, obviously how we got our rights, but female-only spaces were just allowed in them. It was because of this part called Section 7D. And that was basically the part that just went like, if it's for the equality between men and women, then there's no problem with it. And one of the spaces, say, that would fit under there is like breastfeeding rooms. It's like this is a special measure that is needed exclusively for women. One of the other side tries to sort of make this argument that you need to take out all of these definitions because you've got to be able to cater for trans men who might need to use it. So you can't make it a woman-only space because then, how would the trans men be able to use the breastfeeding place? And you're like, okay, let's break that down a little bit here. Because first of all, if you have such severe gender dysphoria or whatever, and you feel that you were born in the wrong body, that you have to live your life as a man, why are you having a baby? Why are you getting pregnant, doing the most female thing out of our body, like the most biggest difference between the male and female bodies? You're not triggered by pregnancy or breastfeeding, but if you're considered a woman who's doing it. It makes no sense. It's not supposed to. So anyone who's listening going, that makes no sense, you are correct. But women who claim to be men who do this, and there are some who have babies, in fact that's the only time they ever get any media attention, while the men who claim to be women are around winning awards and in sports and things like that, the women who claim to be men only get attention if they're having a baby. It's same sexism, different outfit. But under the normal law, they're allowed to come in because it's on the basis of sex. Their sex hasn't changed. So even if they think they're a man, it's irrelevant because of the basis of sex. And it was like the other side in the court case really couldn't get their head around this, that, say on Giggle, women who claim to be men or non-binary or whatever one of the other billion gender identities that exist, they're welcome on the app. Because it wasn't on the basis of gender identity. It was on the basis of sex. We didn't police thoughts. It was irrelevant. And a man who claims to be a woman is being treated exactly like any other man. Again, his gender identity is irrelevant because it's on the basis of sex. And I've spent 3 years now watching the Sex Discrimination Commissioner being like, I just don't know how this works. And I'm like, well, then why are you here? Why aren't you out there with doing the Gender Identity Discrimination Act? Or, I don't know, you should just be walking around with a sign saying I'm insane. Like, it's just, they're trying to erase sex and reality from legislation and force us all to believe in ideology under fear of punishment. And I just think that is possibly the most terrifying thing that could be happening to a society. And then on top of that, no one is giving it attention. They're just saying the people in charge are going, it's just a culture war. It's like, no, these are your rights too. Do you want to be punished, even as a man? Do you want to be punished for acknowledging what you see with your own eyes, but it's against what the overlords say you're allowed to do? No. So it's why for 3.5 years I've been going around trying to get anyone who would let me speak and listen to me to be saying, this is not like a court case about just a little app with a silly name, Giggle v Tickle. This is a really serious court case that impacts everybody, because if we don't have these rights to truth and reality, we have nothing.
So I'm intrigued to note that you have a daughter,
yes,
and the team around you have another 10 daughters, no
yes,
boys, funnily enough.
No, I mean,
so
this is
you and the team that are in there in that court, you're hardly likely not to have the best interests of girls at heart.
Well, this is a very important aspect to me, and anyone who has children understands that your world changes the moment you have them, and so suddenly
absolutely changes.
You have to fight for them. Yep. So I have one daughter. Catherine Deeves has 3 daughters. Brady Nolan has 5 daughters, and then Noel Hotley, our case SC, he has 2 daughters. So just by pure coincidence, we all have daughters. But for me, I would think about it quite frequently, because I got the Australian Human Rights Commission complaint, incidentally, when I was 15 weeks pregnant. So I've been my daughter just turned 3 last month. So that's how long I've been. I don't know her life without dealing with this case. And I remember when I had to make the decision of whether we would settle in the AHRC, so basically give in or fight. I sat on my balcony, I was thinking, and I was probably about 6-7 months pregnant by this point. And I was like, and I knew I was having a girl, because while the AHRC AHRC was telling me all the time that sex is assigned at birth, I'd actually found out I was having a girl before she was born, because that actually is how it works in reality. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, what do I do? Do I just give in and just give up this startup that I want and go and just give in and that's it, no more rights, I've just gave up? Or do you go, I didn't want this, but it's fallen in my lap, and I'm going to have to teach this little girl to stand up for herself, that she has rights, that she can have a voice, and if I gave up because it felt too hard or impossible, how on earth could I ever look her in the eye and teach her anything? So she was my motivation. Before she was even born, I was like, I'm going to have to teach her everything that I'm about to go through. Because I think that even if something feels really impossible, and trust me, in 2022, where the zeitgeist was, this felt really impossible. But I just thought, you have to be in it to win it, and the truth always wins. And so for those reasons alone, you fight. But I think I would be a very bad mother if I just said to my daughter one day, I had an opportunity to fight for your rights, but it was too hard, so I didn't do it.
You raise a really interesting point. I've been struck recently, because I've had some personal experience of it, where people who had a responsibility to take action, and in particular occasionally to remove people who are in positions where they shouldn't be, duck that responsibility and leave it for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then they leave it for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then they leave it for somebody else. That's not leadership. So one of the things that's absolutely bamboozling to most people in the streets, and I include this in myself in this, is where people have lined up. I mean, they're all over the place. You've got Richard Dawkins, mm-hmm. the God delusion. We've got to get rid of all this, religious superstition. Mm-hmm. He's now being cancelled because, like G.K. Chesterton, who said, when you stop believing in God, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything. Mm-hmm. And he's more or less channeling that. He's saying, I never thought we'd see these sort of superstitions. I'm a scientist. There are only 2 sexes. So he's been cancelled. Yep. Then you've got a situation where some women, J.K. Rowling, who's really an admirable person and admired around the world, mm-hmm. has copped it like you wouldn't believe. Mm-hmm. Germaine Greer, Senator Claire Chandler mm-hmm. in Australia, the UN raconteur, Reem Elsalem. Yep. So you've got all of these people who you might expect to be respected, if you like, in the modern zeitgeist for their modern, up-to-date views. You know, they're respected people. They've, if you like, in many ways driven the zeitgeist. And now you've got an extraordinary situation where defenders of the lesbian community, as I understand it, are absolutely with you on this.
Well,
how do we make sense of this?
Well, it depends, I suppose, on how you define a lesbian, because so actual lesbians have been on our side. Lesbian Action Group intervened in the case, and they were brilliant because they want to be able to run female-only lesbian events, and because
that's called freedom of association.
Yes, and because they don't want heterosexual men claiming to be lesbians at their events, because that's a pervert. That's not a lesbian. That's a male heterosexual. That's a heterosexual man.
Can I be rude just there, just interrupt for a moment? It goes back to an earlier point. When I was talking about the ABC, for example, always talking about man's worst behaviour. We know there are perverts.
Yeah.
We know there are.
Yeah.
It's not beyond the wit of man to know that there will be perverts who will use these newfound laws.
Of course. Oh, they are. That's exactly what's happening.
Perverted intent, and they may visit.
That's why
I know that's stating the obvious, but how much more bluntly have we got to state
Because that's
this?
all around the world. Convicted sex offenders have suddenly been claiming they were women and wanting to go into women's prisons, and many getting in there. So you've got male rapists in women's prisons, basically being rewarded. But I
interrupted. I'm sorry.
You're right. So Lesbian Action Group intervened because they don't want to be forced to have heterosexual men at their events. But then you've got both the Sex Discrimination Commission and Equality Australia, which is one of the biggest LGBTQI plus organisations in the country, very well funded, intervened as well, arguing that heterosexual men can be lesbians. So this is Equality Australia, an organisation actually going against the L in their own acronym.
Just repeat that.
Equality Australia intervened against the lesbians. They said no.
It is possible for a
for a heterosexual male to be to them they are that's a lesbian. If a man identifies as a lesbian, he's a lesbian. And so Equality Australia is an organisation that was set up to fight for same-sex marriage. So they very much knew what sex was 10 years ago. Obviously won same-sex marriage, and now have pivoted to keep their organisation going, have pivoted to fighting in federal court to erase sex from law completely and completely erase any protections on the basis of sexual orientation, because they want it to be on the basis of gender identity. That's chilling, it's terrifying. So when there's this claim that it's this LGBTQ, whatever, harmonious community, no, it's LGB is on the basis of sex, that's sexual orientation. The rest of it is identity, and they are in complete conflict with each other, as it's now established. They cannot deny this. They are in there in court, saying it, writing it down. They are against sexual orientation. It has to be gender. Now that is homophobia. So gender ideology is a movement that obviously we've said about the free speech and association and everything, but at its heart it is misogynistic and homophobic. But it is being presented to people as it's the kind one. They're the victims. They're the oppressed ones. But I've never heard a satisfactory answer of how a 50-something-year-old man, straight man, who calls himself a lesbian and wants to go into a lesbian event and can force his way in, how is he oppressed? It doesn't seem that way to me at all. And I don't like to look at the world through sort of, just oppression and minorities and things like that. I do think that we live in this colourful world together. We all have to coexist. We're all different. 8 billion different identities currently in play, basically, because it's just personalities and experiences. And I think that anyone can think whatever they want about themselves, but if we're going to have laws, they have to be based on reality. And the only way to have laws that actually work properly is, in this context, is to have them on the basis of sex, because we all have a sex, even if you're trying to reject it. If we don't, we're in a situation where women and lesbians have been completely erased in law and society because they're going back into the closet. We will self-exclude from various things so that gender ideology can have free reign. And then it wins.
We're rapidly reaching the situation where the state decides what we can say, who we can associate with, what we must believe, and indeed the fourth right really is the right to private property, including your skill set that you can trade on the market to earn a living. In fact, the state should defend those freedoms, recognising that they belong to the individuals in a free and democratic society, and governments should only take upon restrictions or limitations with the agreement of the people. We're reversing the order completely. There is so much more at stake in all of this than people realise. So, Sall, you've been very gutsy. You've been wonderful to talk to. I do in every way wish you all the best. I hope many people see this or listen to it. And if you need further support, I hope they're going to be there because they have been to date.
Yes, it's been really, we've been able to do this because of the support and the generosity of people. Gosh, it's just a nightmare to think if we have to go to the High Court. But if we do, we do. I've been told all along, I was never in the dark about it, that there's a high chance that this case ends up in the High Court. But just in the practicality of that, it would be another over $1 million in legal fees. And don't get me wrong, my legal team is amazing. And this week we had Noel Hutley, SC, and Brady Nolan and Catherine Deeves were there. They'd worked the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that has gone into this to be able to make sure that reality could win. But because it's just would make sure that people are brave enough to side with reality. But yeah, if we have to go back to court, we will. But if anybody does want to know more information about the case or support it, we're still crowdfunding for this round because this has been an expensive week. But gigglecrowdfund.com is the platform, and we update it with any news when we have it. And you can sort of read of all of the different intricacies and what we've been fighting for, why we've been fighting for it, what's at stake if we lose it. If we lose this, Australia is in a pretty dark space.
Those who would say, and this was a line, of course, run during the marriage equality debate, that if you oppose it, you're on the wrong side of history, this time round are themselves wrong. The zeitgeist is plainly moving. This sort of overreach will invite real sadness, I think, for activists who are acting inappropriately and unwisely. And in the end, this is a price we're paying for saying you must believe the science and then not believing the science.
Yeah, I think the concept that you're on the right or the wrong side of history. I'm on the side of truth. It's just as simple as that.
That's
if
right.
we're going to talk about history, at no point in human history has a human being ever changed sex. There's never been more than two sexes. Once upon a time, we didn't know that the Earth was round. But we still knew male and female. In the human infancy of our species, it was the most basic fact that we've always known. That's how terrifying it is that we're now in a time where people are actually saying we don't know that.
You put it very powerfully. Thanks.
Thank you so much.